Hi, I'm Vividox. Today I'll share my hair drawing process with you. If you also like this realistic yet comic-inspired style, grab your drawing tablet and let's create together. These are the brushes I use when painting hair. First, the pencil brush. This is my go-to for sketching the foundation and mapping out the direction of individual hair strands. Next, the skin brush. Probably my most used brush overall. I work with larger sizes for base colors, then switch to smaller sizes when refining details. For controlled blending, I rely on the half-soft brush. Its dual nature is perfect for hair. The hard edge helps me cleanly define sections, while the soft edge seamlessly blends hair clusters together. The soft round brush is essential for light work. I use it to establish light, shadow transitions, soften edges, and block in fundamental lighting. Finally, the texture brush adds that extra layer of realism. It creates dimensional complexity by enhancing surface textures and generating natural-looking randomized hair details. The eraser is also an active painting tool, not just for corrections. First, for precision shaping. We can use it to refine edges and carefully carve out individual hair strands. This helps create that realistic separation between locks of hair. Second, for tonal control. By using soft round eraser, we can create soft transitions between hair layers. This builds up depth and dimension in a way that feels organic and natural. Now let's talk about layer blending modes. These are essential tools I use daily for coloring, lighting, and rendering. Multiply mode. I primarily use it for overlaying line art and adding realistic shadows. What makes it special is how it darkens underlying layers while preserving luminosity. Glow dodge. This mode is perfect when you need intense light sources. Reducing its opacity gives you beautiful subtle glow effects while boosting color vibrancy. For strong color work, I use hard light mode. It's ideal for applying high saturation colors. When you lower the opacity, it creates wonderful color variations in shadow areas. When I need more subtle coloring, soft light mode is my choice. It adds low saturation tones that help unify the overall color scheme. Correction layers. I rely heavily on tone curve and hue, saturation, luminosity adjustments to establish my base colors. When you create correction layers through the menu, they appear as new layers with masks above your current selection. But using keyboard shortcuts applies adjustments directly to your selected layer. Tone curve. Let's start with basic exposure control. Dragging the lower right anchor point downward will darken your entire image. Pulling the upper left anchor point upward brightens everything. For more advanced color work, use the drop-down menu to access individual RGB channels. This lets you add subtle color tints to grayscale images by adjusting red, green, or blue channels separately. Hue saturation luminosity. This gives you three-dimensional color control. Luminosity affects overall brightness. Saturation controls color intensity, increase for vibrancy or decrease for muted tones. Hue shifts the color balance entirely. We can also use layer masks with these adjustments. This allows us to make localized changes without affecting the whole image, create complex color variations, and target specific areas that need adjustment. I begin by quickly sketching head drafts from 3 different angles, using a 3D head model as reference. However, through subsequent refinement, I made some adjustments to steer them toward a more realistic style. Then, on a new layer, I begin designing the character's hairstyle. The purpose of these preliminary sketches is to establish the basic shape of the hairstyle and determine the flow direction of hair in different sections. So I keep them rough and avoid getting bogged down in details, just detailed enough to clearly show the hairstyle type. While working, I use selection tools to adjust the hair volume and facial feature placement, ensuring proper head proportions after adding the hair elements. To achieve better visual balance in the composition, I also include a rough upper body sketch. Here's what to keep in mind. The hairline is typically positioned halfway between the top of the head and the eyebrows in adults, forming the classic 3 equal divisions proportion with the chin, where the distance from the hairline to the brow ridge equals that from the brow ridge to the base of the nose, and again from the nose to the chin. Once the hairstyle becomes clearly recognizable, we'll move into the grayscale phase, where we'll develop the form and volume in more detail. To begin, let's organize our workspace by placing the sketch in a new folder. We'll set the layer blending mode to multiply and reduce its opacity. This will allow us to see our work clearly while keeping the sketch visible as a guide. Let's begin by laying down a neutral mid-gray base tone for the hair. As we work, it's important to conceptually divide the hair into front and back sections based on their position relative to the skin. Now let's add a simple background to visually set our main light source coming from the upper right. With this lighting direction in mind, we'll use a soft round brush to brighten the areas that catch the most light, like the top of the head and curled hair ends. At the same time, we'll add darker tones to shadowed areas, where hair overlaps or near the neck. Here's a tip. Gently lightening the back sections around the shoulders creates a subtle translucent effect. This simple technique makes the hair appear lighter and more natural, as if light is passing through the strands. Now, let's add some details to the hair. Refine the process by reducing brush size and following the hair's natural flow. Sample nearby grayscale values to add strand group details. Alternate between brush and eraser to define larger shapes before focusing on individual strands. Apply texture brushes selectively at the fringe and bangs areas, maintaining intentional density variation with tighter strands at the forehead and looser sections at the back. Starting with grayscale allows us to focus purely on developing the hair's volume and lighting, free from the distractions of color. This approach has another major advantage: it makes structural issues much easier to identify and correct. I always add a hue, saturation, luminosity correction layer at the very top of all my layers. Throughout the painting process, I make it a habit to turn saturation down to 0 and regularly toggle this layer on and off. This simple technique helps me find potential problems. In this second demonstration with white short hair, you'll notice I'm not actually using pure white to create the illusion of brightness. Instead, I'm building contrast against darker elements, like the background and skin tones. This dark to light method gives us a much wider grayscale range to work with, which means we can add subtle details and light effects that really enhance the three-dimensional quality. Even if your initial values look darker than you'd expect, don't worry, when we make brightness adjustments later, all those carefully crafted details will remain perfectly preserved. Keeping our light source consistent at a 45-degree angle from the upper right. Instead of painstakingly rendering every single strand, I create the illusion of falling hair by shaping directional clusters with careful erasing. In my practice, I found that hair naturally has organic randomness, and when we over-render it, we actually lose that lifelike, atmospheric quality. What truly makes hair convincing isn't microscopic detail, but capturing its essential movement and flow. During the painting process, I always develop the facial features and body proportions simultaneously with the hair. This is because hair isn't just an isolated element, it grows directly from the head, which means its structure, color, and lighting are fundamentally connected to the underlying forms. There are 3 core benefits to this approach. It keeps the overall composition balanced, lets me catch and fix structural issues early, and most importantly, helps develop that crucial ability to see and judge the artwork as a complete, unified piece. For our final demonstration, I'll show you how I paint my favorite hairstyle, a voluminous high ponytail. The key to making it look natural lies in avoiding perfectly uniform lines, which can make the hair appear stiff and overly tight. Instead, I focus on creating irregular curves along the crown and nape area. These subtle imperfections actually give the hair its bounce and movement. This natural rendering not only looks more realistic but also allows light to pass through beautifully, enhancing the richness of colors we'll add later. For a more natural look with this high ponytail, I leave some wispy hairs framing the face and neck area. These soft, flyaway strands break up the perfect shape of the ponytail, giving it that lived-in, casually elegant vibe we see in real life. With our light source coming from the rear left, I make sure to add bright highlights along the left contours. Finally, I quickly block in the basic facial features and clothing details to complete our grayscale foundation. Now that we've fully built up the light and shadow, it's time to bring this to life with color. Here's how I do the coloring. I typically start by setting up base colors for the background, character, and hair using a combination of tone curve and hue saturation luminosity correction layers. Since the hair is spread across several layers, I first make a selection of all hair layers by holding Ctrl and Shift, and click each hair layer with the selection tool. This lets me create a single masked adjustment layer that affects all the hair at once for consistent color correction. Once I'm happy with the overall hair color, I duplicate this adjustment layer and apply it individually to each hair layer before merging them down. This completes our basic hair coloring setup. With the foundation colors in place, I then dedicate time to refining details, working on both the character's features and clothing to bring everything together. Now let's make the hair more vibrant. I start by adding a multiply layer where I paint with a rich, saturated red on the hair's structural curves to create vibrant contrast. In shadowed areas like behind the ears, I switch to a deeper red to enhance the hair's dimension. Once I'm happy with this effect, I duplicate and merge this layer with each individual hair section. To enhance the environmental lighting, I blend in soft blue tones where the hair meets the neck. These gentle color shifts pick up reflections from both the background and earrings. This intentional warm-cool contrast isn't just pretty, it actually creates better depth and makes the whole scene feel more atmospheric. Finally, I return to the front hair sections to polish the lighting and strand details. Using tone curve correction and layer masks, I balance the contrast and tones to achieve that perfect softness. And of course, I always make sure to adjust the background colors too, so everything stays perfectly harmonious. Now let's add more details to bring this hairstyle to life. I duplicate the hair sketch layer, then lock its transparency and sample matching colors from the hair to recolor the line art. This helps the outlines blend naturally into the hair shapes. Working from back to front, I refine each section of hair, paying close attention to where strands overlap and sharpening key edges to define the structure. When adding shadows that fall on the face, I create soft gradients that are strongest near the roots and gradually fade out toward the ends. By adjusting the opacity, these shadows integrate seamlessly with the skin tones. To create highlights, I add a glow dodge layer and use a soft brush to accentuate light catching areas, particularly around the shoulders where illumination would naturally enhance the hair's layered appearance and lightness. After lowering the highlight layer's opacity for subtlety, I clean up the transitions with the eraser. A final curves adjustment ties all the colors together, balancing the overall color scheme. With these final color adjustments, the hair coloring process for our pink mid-length style is now complete. Here's the coloring process for white hair. Before applying color, I separated the character's face and body onto different layers. This lets me use transform tools to fine-tune the head proportions and facial angle, ensuring proper anatomical balance before we even start coloring. For the base color, I begin with a tone curve adjustment to push the overall tone toward cooler hues, increasing blue and green while reducing red. This creates the nice foundation for realistic white hair. After setting this foundation, I work on the skin tones first, then move on to the clothes and facial details. Now let's dive into the hair detailing process. I begin by adding a hard light layer to blend subtle red tones from the skin into the hairline area. This creates natural looking roots and avoids that fake hair look. At the same time, I paint soft yellow highlights where the light hits the hair, pulling colors from the environment to add depth and variety. Next comes texture work. I paint individual hair groups and flyaway strands to bring the hairstyle to life. That same hard light layer also helps me deepen shadows on the underside of hair masses, while another pass with warm tones soften highlight edges. To tie everything together, I add a glow dodge layer for lighting consistency, then use the eraser to refine glow effects and smooth out transitions. Finally, I make a quick tone curve adjustment to ensure the background colors complement the skin tones. Here's the coloring process for the black high ponytail. I began by cropping the canvas and refining the ponytail's ends with the eraser, while making slight adjustments to the background lighting. Following my standard workflow, I first applied a cool overall tone using tone curve correction, then proceeded to color the skin and render the character's clothing. With the base colors set, we'll now refine the hair rendering. First, I go back to my tone curves adjustment to deepen the hair color. This gives me a richer black base, while slightly changing its color tone. Next, I grab my eraser tool and work on the mask layer to carefully bring back highlighted areas. This controlled reveal really makes the hair's three-dimensional form pop. For the ponytail details, I add a new layer to paint in individual strands. After coloring these sections, I lower the opacity to help them blend naturally with the main body of hair. Then I make some adjustments by using the eraser to clean up the overall shape and adding details around the hair tie for that perfect finishing touch. With the facial proportions adjusted and features detailed, I turned my attention to refining the hairline. Following its natural contour, I deepened the shadows while preserving those slight imperfections that make it look authentically organic. No one has a perfectly straight hairline in real life. To make the transition even more believable, where skin shows through the hair, I blended in soft dark red tones along the edges. For the final lighting touches, I added a glow dodge layer to create that beautiful rim light along the character's right side. I duplicated this effect across relevant layers for precise control. One final glow dodge layer accentuated delicate highlights along the hair edges. We've now reached the end of the coloring phase. Let's start by adding depth to our background. I take a large texture brush and apply random strokes to break up the flatness and create interesting surface variation. This gives the background more visual richness. Next, I duplicated the existing tone curve and glow dodge adjustment layers, merging them with their respective layers for a consolidated effect. Then, I created a new layer to refine the back sections of the hair, adding strand details and softening them with a glow dodge layer to unify the lighting. After that, I resized the character's head slightly using the transform tool to improve overall proportions, then spent some time refining facial features. Once the face is looking sharp, I switch to a texture brush to add definition to the bangs, followed by defining hair strands along the crown and sides. By adjusting the opacity and using the eraser to blend, I ensured these strands integrated naturally into the main hair volume. The ends get special attention too. I reshape their curves and add those all-important flyaway hairs that make it look authentically natural. To frame the face beautifully, I deepen the shadows around the temples and add a few strategic face framing strands. For those final polish touches, I applied additional color adjustments to the background and overall composition. Add some sparkling earrings as accents, and create one last glow dodge layer to enhance the final lighting. And there we have it. Our pink mid-length hairstyle is now complete with all its dimension and detail. To keep the video concise, I've skipped showing the facial adjustments and refinements for the second demonstration character. The hair detailing process follows the same workflow as before, building up strand groups layer by layer according to their spatial relationships, blending them into the main hair volume through careful erasing and opacity adjustments, while adding flyaway hairs along the contours and ends. Here's an important principle. Every detail we add needs to harmonize with our existing lighting setup. This keeps the hairstyle's core structure intact while we enhance it. If any new elements seem too bold, don't worry about deleting them completely. Just lower the layer opacity to turn them into subtle textures that actually boost depth and realism. That's the beauty of the Impasto approach. We build up colors, lighting, and details gradually through layers. Remember, there's no such thing as a permanent mistake here. We've got all the tools we need to refine and adjust. It just takes a bit of patience. To really bring out the hair's layered look, I use a hard-edged round brush to add orange accents along the natural divisions between hair sections. These strategic color pops highlight the haircut structure beautifully. The same technique works wonders on the ends at the back, giving them extra dimension. Finally, I revisited the facial features for additional detailing and incorporated ear accessories, completing the second demonstration featuring white short hair. For our final demonstration, I've kept the complete character rendering and background integration process intact because I want to show you the full journey from sketch to finished artwork. This reflects a core principle I've always followed in my practice: characters should never exist in a void. Even a simple monochromatic background serves crucial purposes. It establishes the lighting environment, defines the value structure, and creates atmospheric context that shapes how we develop the character itself. These environmental elements become our roadmap for refinement. Many people learning Impasto techniques face the same challenge, knowing which details to emphasize. For me, refinement means clarifying how light reveals form through value and color relationships. That's why I never practice on pure white backgrounds. They limit my imagination for potential details. You'll notice I added deeper cool tones behind the facial area, while using lighter warm tones behind the hair, softened to create focus through value and temperature contrast. Then, I darkened the overall hair mass while reducing blue and red tones to achieve a more natural black hair. The detailing process began with refining sideburn strands and adding hairline with a texture brush. I strategically placed white guide strands along key contours to mark future highlight areas. Further development included enhancing the ponytail and crown area with lightened sections to suggest translucency, while subtle red tones at the nape ensure a natural transition to the skin. I then trimmed the right sideburn for cleaner presentation. A final pass with glow dodge layers perfected the lighting effects. Before completion, I incorporated subtle accessories to add visual interest to the dark hair. Now, all three hairstyles with different colors are finally complete. Since the full painting process is over 20 hours long, I can't explain every detail in just one video. In fact, I've even removed 2 other demonstration pieces that were less polished. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, and I will address them in my future videos. That's all for my hair drawing process. A huge thank you to everyone who watched till the end. If you found this helpful, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I'll be back soon with new content, so stay tuned and happy painting.